Hey everybody, just a quick video that I'd like to make about what's been going on in regards to trans children and trans rights in regards to a recent court case which you may have seen Rose of Dawn cover. So recently there was a court case involving a detransitioning lady by the name of Keira Bell and an anonymous mother of a currently transitioning girl, an autistic girl by the way, who have been suing the NHS, in particular the NHS Tavistock Clinic. As far as I'm aware, the only UK clinic that is built, its primary function is to help with gender reassignment surgery and therapy and things like that. Mrs. A has joined forces with Keira Bell because she's worried that her child, who is autistic, doesn't actually know what she's got herself into and fears that she has been given the go-ahead for surgery without much due course. And likewise, Keira Bell most famously has said that the NHS didn't challenge her enough when she was 16 about whether or not she really wanted to go through with this and didn't even tell her about the long-term effects of what could happen. Because what happened with Keira Bell is this: she was a tomboyish girl and then online started looking up transgender issues and transgenderism, things like that, and began to wonder whether or not she herself was transgender because she didn't feel very comfortable in her own skin. And apparently she was fast-tracked for puberty blockers and eventually had a double mastectomy and went through all the usual processes you would imagine to become a man. She took testosterone as well, for example. Recently, she realised that she was actually wrong. She's a woman, not a man. And that was just a phase in her life, I guess. And she was very angry that nobody actually did what was necessary in order to make sure that actually this is somebody with gender dysphoria, because apparently Tavistock just decided, yeah, you know what, you're fine, you're giving us informed consent, don't worry about it, we're not going to rigorously examine you to make sure you actually do have gender dysphoria, go ahead, do it. This is why Miss Bell is saying that she should have been challenged more. This is life-changing surgery, and unfortunately the testosterone that she took could have rendered her infertile. So not only has she had this double mastectomy and taken large amounts of testosterone to change her body, she's also potentially infertile, so she can't have kids. And amazingly, somehow the High Court of Justice sided with her and Mrs. A. The whole point of the court case was to decide whether or not children actually can give informed consent and realise nature and gravity of the decisions that they're making in regards to transitioning and therapy and things like that. The actual legal term, which originated here in England and Wales, is called Gillick competence. Is a child under the age of 16 able to give informed consent for surgery without the need of their parents? Now, of course, Keira Bell was 16, and even she would argue that actually, even at that age, she couldn't give them informed consent because she didn't realise just how long-term and permanent these effects would be for her. Not only that, she probably didn't realise just how damaging they could be in terms of just, well, her fertility alone. Never mind the mental health aspect of it. And the court ruled that children are not Gillick competent. They can't possibly understand the long-term effects. And I would wager even some teenagers, quite a lot of them, are too short-term in their thinking to even begin to consent to such surgery. It should be something that is over 18 in my opinion, but hey, you know what? The law is the law. It's surprising, isn't it, that the judge ruled in their favour? But what you've got to understand is that when it comes to dealing with the courts and getting judges, it's like Russian roulette. You could get a competent judge, like what Mrs. A and Keira Bell got, or you could get what Johnny Depp had. This recent victory for Mrs. A and Miss Bell has also coincided a few months ago with the British government deciding that children, at least under the age of 16, I might be wrong, I don't know the exact age of where the cut-off point is, will not be allowed gender reassignment surgery. Essentially, the government has already made the decision that children can't have surgery anyway, but the courts essentially set the precedence that, yeah, they don't even have the ability to give us consent because they don't understand what they're doing. And of course, the trans activists are angry. They're telling us that actually gender reassignment for children is totally fine. It saves lives. It makes people's lives better. This is an attack on their rights. These people's rights are, of course, as the saying goes, human rights, and that to do this would put so many lives in danger, and that this is setting back our society. But of course, that was a lot of nonsense, because we all know that the whole point of the court case was not to decide whether or not gender reassignment surgery is good. The whole point was to determine whether or not children can give informed consent to life-changing surgery, such as gender dysphoria. It's not about any of the other things. That is stuff that can be debated amongst experts in the field. This is about children's lives. It's not about rights, it's about people's lives. And as the court has ruled, children cannot. And what amazes me even though I know this is what they do nowadays, is that the Tavistock Clinic just brazenly accepted people over and over and over again. There were exceptions, but they were few and far between. It seemed to me that they just assumed that these children could just give informed consent like that, as if they were all competent, they were all mature, and then fast-tracked them without any issues towards puberty blockers or gender surgery later on in life. This is madness. This is medical professionals being grossly irresponsible towards the people that are meant to be in their care. And I know it's the NHS. I know that they do that a lot. They've always been like this. But this is actually something that they didn't always used to do when it came to gender reassignment surgery. I remember some of my friends at university who started transitioning, they had to go through so much therapy just to determine if they had gender dysphoria. The people who would be later on operating on them and giving them these drugs needed to know for sure that these people have it and they understand what they're going through, what they're going to be doing. Now, of course, these people were adults. These were people over the age of 18. They were slightly younger than me in many cases. But still, there was a rigorous process only a couple of years ago. Now it seems like they just don't care and they're just going to fast-track kids through the process. Why? I don't know. But I can hazard a guess that it may be due to some activist pressure, such as groups like Mermaids, who really want to push this thing through and get children on puberty blockers and transitioning. That's the only thing I can think of that doesn't delve into conspiracy theory that can explain logically why they would do such things. And it's not surprising that Mrs. A is suing Tavistock Clinic and the NHS for her autistic child, because for those of you who aren't aware or may have forgotten, there was an expose in the Daily Mail a few years ago by a teacher who said that autistic girls were essentially being groomed by other children who were transgender or non-binary, as she says, into being non-binary and transgender. Basically, they were being pink-pilled, as the saying goes, and their disability was being used and taken advantage of to confuse them into thinking that they're something that they're not, and that this was being allowed in the school. A lot of these girls were later on going into the Tavistock Clinic or other clinics across the UK that may also have these services and apply for gender reassignment surgery. Some of them were indeed booked for double mastectomies. But of course, most of these girls were not transgender. Not at all. These were simply tomboys, or as she guessed, lesbians, and were being led astray. She also reckoned it was probably a popularity contest. Being transgender is a dead cool thing for Zoomers. So as you can see, as somebody who's on the spectrum, I'm very concerned about that. I don't want to see people with autism getting manipulated and led astray and being told that they're something that they're not, and then have life-changing surgery that they can't fix. And none of this has anything to do with rights. This has nothing to do with harming people. If, and I will say this, if the surgery is so necessary, so good, and saves so many lives, which I'm sure it does save lives. Just look at Rose of Dawn and a lot of my friends. However, for a lot of them, they're not doing so good, especially the ones that haven't quite transitioned the way that they thought they would, the ones that don't pass as well, as they say. Again, there is a high suicide rate amongst transgender people, and how much of that is due to oppression, as some of the leftist activists like to say it is, or is it due to the fact that the gender dysphoria wasn't fixed as a result of it? Maybe gender reassignment surgery was not right for them as individuals. How do we know that it actually saves the amount of lives that they claim it does? They're just saying these slogans and sound bites to try and say that, oh, look what these people are doing. They're ruining people's lives, they're putting lives at risk. When are they really? Keira Bell would not be where she is now if she was actually rigorously tested and given the challenge that she needed to essentially determine whether or not she needed it in the first place, which turns out she didn't. And I bet there are thousands of people who have done this and are hurting. They are suffering. But apparently, their suffering, their hurt, should not even be counted. It should not even be discussed. It should not even be thought of. Just think about the poor trans people who now can't get any surgery. Or at least trans people, quote unquote, I may add. And again, as I've said over and over again, there is this strange belief that people who are tomboys, people who are slightly effeminate as children, or even as adults, are somehow a different sex, transgender, they're non-binary, they're this, that, and the other. That is erroneous. This is a mindset that I can only imagine comes from a bygone era. This is something that is akin to, back in the day, for example, believing in demons or wizards. That's what that mindset is, in my opinion. This is backward step in our thinking. Nobody used to think that a tomboy is basically somebody who's confused. No, it's a woman who expresses her femininity in a different way to the average woman. She does it in a more masculine way, one could say, but she's still a woman. A boy who may like dolls or makeup isn't necessarily a girl deep down inside. He's a guy who likes makeup, or he possibly might be gay. 99% of these people are perfectly normal cisgendered people. They don't need surgery, they don't need therapy, they don't need anything. They just need to grow up in happy households and have a good childhood and be looked after. That's all they need, and they will be fine. They won't be needing all this therapy, all this pink pilling nonsense. They don't need any of that. They'll be fine. But because of academia, claim that gender is a social construct, and this is something that they've been changing that. And not only have they managed to change that in education and in other areas of society, they've also managed to invest it in the places that you wouldn't imagine that it would take root in, and that is the NHS, medical professions, psychological professions. I can only imagine that one who thinks that gender is a social construct could think that such a thing like this could be possible, that a tomboy is actually a boy, not a girl, and a slightly effeminate boy is a girl. And as we know, John Money, the man who originally proposed the idea that gender is just a social construct, tried to pink pill two brothers. He made one transition, and later on in life, the man, who always knew he was a man deep down inside, ended up killing himself. It seems to me that we're doing what John Money did to this man on a mass scale. But anyway, I'm going on with myself now. I'll leave it there. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you all later.